My name is Madison Reed. I'm 29 years old, and I'm sitting in the venue where I was supposed to get married 3 weeks from now, watching an event coordinator pack away sample centerpieces that will never be used. 4 hours ago, I sent cancellation notices to 150 guests. My phone has not stopped vibrating since. And somehow, beneath the humiliation, the panic, and the knowledge that I just lost $22,000, I feel calmer than I have in months. Let me explain. I had been with Ethan Cole for 3.5 years. He was 27, charming when he wanted to be quick with a joke, and capable of making ordinary evenings feel important. We had been engaged for 8 months. Until last Tuesday, I thought we were happy. Wedding planning had been surprisingly manageable. Ethan handled decorations and color schemes because he cared more about them than I did. I handled contracts, transportation payments, and vendor schedules. We compromised on the guest list. We disagreed about cake flavors and laughed about it later. Normal couple problems. My best friend, Paige Bennett, had been in my life since middle school. When we were 16, she pulled me out of a rip current during a beach trip after I froze and stopped fighting the water. Later, she sat beside me through my father's chemotherapy appointments, brought groceries when I was broke, and talked me out of abandoning my career during the worst year of my life. Making Paige my maid of honor was never a discussion. It was a fact. Last Tuesday, Ethan and I were eating dinner when he placed his fork down and said, "I've been thinking. Paige probably shouldn't be your maid of honor." I stopped chewing. What? She isn't really wedding party material. I stared at him, waiting for the smile that would tell me he was joking. It never came. What does that even mean? She's uncomfortable at formal events. She doesn't photograph well, and she gets quiet around people she doesn't know. Paige gave a beautiful speech at her sister's wedding. That was different. How? Ethan began folding his napkin into increasingly smaller squares. It was one of his tells. Whenever he wanted something he knew was unreasonable, he kept his hands busy. Madison, I don't want this to become an argument. Then tell me what this is actually about. He exhaled through his nose. I want Vanessa in the wedding party. Vanessa Hale, his ex-girlfriend. The woman he had dated for 4 years before meeting me. The woman whose name still appeared on his phone, occasionally always followed by explanations about old mutual friends or harmless jokes. You want your ex-girlfriend at our wedding. She was already invited. I know, you insisted. I mean, in the wedding party. As a bridesmaid. I laughed once because the alternative was throwing my glass across the room. Ethan remained completely serious. You want me to remove my best friend and replace her with your ex. She knows almost everyone. She's outgoing. She'll make the photographs look more balanced. The photographs? Don't say it like that. How should I say it? He leaned closer, lowering his voice, as though he were explaining something embarrassing to a child. Paige is short. She's gained weight and she doesn't really know how to style herself. Vanessa is tall, polished, and photogenic. Paige, standing beside you, will throw off the aesthetic. For a moment, I heard nothing except the refrigerator humming behind him. Paige had held my hair while I vomited after my first chemotherapy room panic attack. She had slept on a plastic hospital chair when my father's condition declined. She had once emptied her savings account to help me avoid eviction, and Ethan had reduced her to a visual defect. My best friend of 17 years should be excluded because she might ruin your photographs. Our photographs, he corrected. Then he reached across the table. There's something else. Vanessa has more experience organizing events. She could even be maid of honor. Technically, she'd be more useful than Paige. My skin went cold. You already asked her. His finger stopped moving. What? You already discussed this with Vanessa. Ethan looked away. I mentioned the possibility. Before speaking to me, I knew you would react emotionally. That sentence changed something inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically. It felt like a lock turning. What did Vanessa say? She agreed. So the two of you planned to remove Paige from my wedding party before either of you bothered to tell me. You're making it sound sinister. It sounds exactly like what happened. Ethan pushed back from the table. This is my wedding too. Interesting choice, I said quietly. His shoulders relaxed. He thought I had surrendered. So you'll talk to Paige, I looked at the man I had planned to marry and realized he was smiling. Not apologetically. Victoriously. "Oh," I told him. "I'll handle everything." The next morning at 8, I called the venue. The coordinator reminded me that the $10,000 deposit was non-refundable. I told her I understood. The caterer kept another $3,000. The photographer kept $2,000. The florist kept $1,500. The DJ kept $500. Smaller deposits and administrative fees consumed the rest. By noon, I had canceled every contract. Total loss approximately $22,000. Money I had spent 3 years saving. My hands shook after the final call, but I did not cry. Crying would come later when I had somewhere safe enough to collapse. First, I opened the invoicing program I used for freelance projects. I created a professional invoice addressed to Vanessa Hale. Venue cancellation $10,000. Catering deposit $3,000. Photography deposit $2,000. Florist entertainment rentals and additional fees. Total due $22,000. At the bottom I wrote, "Thank you for inspiring the cancellation. The maid of honor position clearly meant more to you and Ethan than my marriage did." I emailed it to Vanessa and copied Ethan. Then I sent a message to all 150 guests. The wedding between Ethan Cole and me has been canceled. I recently discovered that we hold fundamentally different values concerning loyalty, honesty, and respect. Thank you for your understanding. No accusation. No public spectacle. Not yet. I packed an overnight bag, turned off my phone, and drove to Paige's apartment. She opened the door wearing pajama pants and holding a mug of coffee. One look at my face, and she stepped aside. "What happened?" "Ethan wanted Vanessa to replace you as maid of honor." Paige blinked slowly. "His ex, Vanessa?" "Yes. The one he swears he barely talks to. The same one." "Why?" "He said you would ruin the aesthetic." She stared at me for 3 full seconds. Then she said, "I always knew I was powerful, but I didn't realize my height could destroy an entire wedding." I laughed. It came out broken, almost like a sob. Paige put down her coffee and wrapped both arms around me. That was when I finally cried. 6 hours later, we sat on her couch with pizza and cheap wine. I turned my phone back on. 14 voicemails from Ethan. 68 missed calls. 8 messages from Vanessa. The first voicemail had been recorded at 1:23 p.m. Ethan was crying. "Madison, what did you do? The venue says the wedding is canceled. Call me." The second came 20 minutes later. "You cannot cancel our wedding without consulting me." The third was panicked. "Vanessa just showed me the invoice. This is insane." By the fourth message, his tone had softened. "Fine. Paige can stay maid of honor. Vanessa doesn't need to be involved. Please call me." The fifth was almost pleading. "My mother is losing her mind. Everyone is asking questions. We can fix this." Vanessa's messages were less emotional. "This invoice is a joke, right? I am not paying for your relationship problems. Tell Ethan to stop calling me." Paige read the last message over my shoulder. "He's calling her. Apparently. Madison, there's something deeply wrong here." I already knew. The request had never been about photographs. The photographs were simply the excuse Ethan believed would be easiest to defend. 2 mornings later, he appeared at Paige's apartment wearing the navy shirt I once told him made his eyes look brighter. He carried a box containing several things from our shared apartment. Paige opened the door but blocked the entrance. "He doesn't," Ethan caught himself, then corrected bitterly. "She doesn't want to see you. This is between me and my fiancé." Ex-fiancé, Paige said. "I should have stayed in the bedroom." Instead, I walked toward the door. Ethan's expression softened immediately. "Baby, please. You can't throw away 3 years because of one tiny request. You wanted to replace Paige with Vanessa." I was thinking about the memories. "You called my best friend unpresentable." I didn't use that exact word. "You said she would ruin the aesthetic." From behind me, Paige said, "I'm literally standing here." Ethan ignored her. "Can we speak privately?" "No." His jaw tightened. "Fine. My mother wants to know who is reimbursing her for her outfit. The outfit she purchased after I told her not to." "You canceled the wedding." You arranged my wedding party with your ex-girlfriend. It was a suggestion. You asked Vanessa before speaking to me. Paige folded her arms. That sounds less like a suggestion and more like a completed transaction. Ethan turned toward her. This is partly your fault. My fault? If you made more effort with your appearance, none of this would have become an issue. The hallway went silent. Paige's face changed, but her voice remained calm. Say what you actually mean. Ethan gestured vaguely at her body. You're not exactly Instagram material. I stepped between them. And that is exactly why this wedding is over. His face reddened. Madison, you're destroying your future over a friend. No, I'm protecting my future from a man who thinks people are decorations. Paige glanced down at her phone. Then she gave a small, humorless laugh. There's another problem. What Ethan snapped. Vanessa is married. Everything stopped. Ethan looked at her as if she had begun speaking another language. No, she isn't. Paige held up the screen. A wedding photograph filled it. Vanessa stood beside a man in a gray suit, both smiling beneath an arch of white flowers. The post was dated 6 months earlier. Ethan took out his phone and began scrolling. His face drained of color. She told me she was single. I studied him carefully. Why would that matter? If you only wanted her as a bridesmaid. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Then, a car door slammed outside. Patricia Cole, Ethan's mother, marched toward the building with the posture of someone arriving to declare war. What is this nonsense about canceling the wedding, she demanded, before reaching the doorway. Do you have any idea how much humiliation you've caused our family? Paige quietly raised her phone and began recording. For legal purposes, she said brightly. Patricia pointed at me. My son was doing you a favor by marrying you. You'll never find anyone better. Ethan stood behind her, pale and silent, still staring at Vanessa's wedding photograph. I looked at the man I had almost married, then at the mother who had taught him that consequences were cruelty whenever they happened to him. I would rather be alone, I said, than spend my life being treated like an accessory in someone else's fantasy. Ethan finally looked up. His expression was no longer apologetic. It was furious. And that was when I understood the cancellation had not ended the conflict. It had only taken away his control of the story. Patricia's face twisted as if I had slapped her. You ungrateful little... Mom, Ethan interrupted. It was the first time he had spoken since seeing Vanessa's wedding photograph. His voice sounded distant. Patricia turned toward him. What? Ethan held up his phone. She's married. Patricia glanced at the screen, then at me, as though Vanessa's secret marriage were somehow another inconvenience I had manufactured. So what, she snapped. That has nothing to do with Madison humiliating us. It has everything to do with it, I said. Ethan told me Vanessa said she was single. Patricia's eyes flicked toward her son. For one brief second, something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, or fear that a larger secret was slipping loose. Then, she recovered. Vanessa's private life is none of your concern. It became my concern when Ethan invited her to replace my best friend in our wedding. I did not replace anyone, Ethan said quickly. I made a suggestion. You promised Vanessa the position before speaking to me. I said it was possible. You told her Paige was being removed. That's not what happened. Paige looked down at the phone, recording everything. Good thing we have all day. Patricia stepped closer to her. Turn that off. No. I did not consent to being recorded. You're standing in the hallway of my building screaming threats. You can leave whenever you like. Patricia looked ready to explode, but Ethan placed a hand on her arm. Mom, stop. She spun toward him. Do not tell me to stop. This woman canceled your wedding, embarrassed our family, and threw away thousands of dollars because you wanted one attractive person in the photographs. That attractive person is his married ex-girlfriend, Paige said. Patricia's nostrils flared. And you are enjoying this far too much. No, Paige replied. I'm enjoying the part where Madison finally sees what all of you are like. Ethan looked at me. Can we please go home and talk? The word home struck harder than I expected. For 3 years, our apartment had been the place where I left my shoes beside his, where we argued over thermostat settings and fell asleep watching documentaries neither of us finished. I had chosen the curtains. Ethan had assembled the dining table badly, and it still leaned slightly to one side. Now the thought of returning there made my stomach tighten. "I'm not going home with you. It's our apartment." It was. His expression hardened. "You don't get to walk away from everything we built." "I already did." Patricia grabbed Ethan's arm. "Come on. Let her stew in this. She'll call when she realizes what she has lost." As they turned away, Ethan looked back at me. This isn't over. The way he said it was not romantic. It was a warning. An hour later, Vanessa texted me. "You need to tell Ethan to stop contacting me." I stared at the message. Then, I typed back. "You agreed to replace my best friend in my wedding. Handle the consequences yourself." Her reply came almost immediately. "He told me you wanted me involved." That was new. I showed Paige. "She's lying," Paige said. "Probably. Or he lied to both of you." That possibility settled between us. I thought back to Ethan, folding his napkin at dinner. The rehearsed wording. The confidence with which he said Vanessa had already agreed. "What exactly did he tell you?" I asked her. Vanessa took several minutes to respond. "He said you felt Paige was unreliable and wanted someone more experienced. He said you were embarrassed to ask her to step down yourself." I read the message twice. Then I felt something inside me go very still. Ethan had not merely gone behind my back. He had used my name to do it. I sent Vanessa a screenshot of the group messages Ethan and I had exchanged about the wedding party weeks earlier. In them, I had repeatedly praised Paige, discussed her dress, and confirmed her speech. Vanessa responded with only 3 words. "He lead then." I did not answer. By that evening, Ethan had posted a long statement online. He did not use my name directly, but everyone knew who he meant. He wrote about men being punished for expressing opinions about controlling women who weaponized money, and about how modern relationships fail when one partner cannot handle mature friendships with exes. His friends responded exactly as he expected. Some called me unstable. Others said I was jealous of Vanessa. One woman wrote that canceling a wedding over a bridal party disagreement proved I had never loved him. Patricia shared the post and added, "The truth always comes out." For 20 minutes, I watched strangers and acquaintances rewrite the last 3 years of my life. Then Paige took my phone away. "Don't argue with them. If I stay silent, they'll believe him. People who want to believe him already will." I hated that she was right. Still, I needed to do something. So I posted the invoice. No caption. No explanation. Just the professional document addressed to Vanessa Hale for $22,000, with a note thanking her for inspiring the cancellation. The reaction shifted almost instantly. Why was Ethan's ex involved in the wedding deposits? Why was she being considered for maid of honor? Why had Ethan told everyone this was only about Madison being jealous? Several people deleted their earlier comments. Others began asking questions Ethan could not answer without exposing himself. His sister Anna messaged me shortly after midnight. "Is it true he wanted Vanessa to replace Paige?" "Yes. He told us you hated that they were still friends." I sent her screenshots of Vanessa's messages and Ethan's original request. Anna was silent for several minutes. Then she wrote, "That is completely different from what Mom told us." "What did she tell you?" "That you had become obsessed with controlling the guest list, that Ethan only wanted Vanessa invited, and that you canceled everything because he defended her." I almost laughed. Instead, I typed, "He wanted Vanessa as maid of honor because Paige was too short and unattractive for the photographs." Anna replied, "Jesus." A second message followed. "I'm sorry." The next few days blurred into boxes, phone calls, and paperwork. Paige helped me find a studio apartment downtown. It was small enough that I could stand in the kitchen and almost touch the couch, but the lease was mine alone. That mattered. 3 days after moving in, I was unpacking dishes when my credit card company called. "Miss Reed, we're contacting you about a purchase totaling $8,000. I nearly dropped the plate in my hand. "What purchase?" "Furniture from an online retailer. The shipping address matches a previous address on your account." The apartment I had shared with Ethan. I canceled the card, immediately disputed the charges, and drove to the police station. The officer taking my report barely looked surprised. "Bad breakup?" she asked. "Canceled wedding." She gave me a tired nod. We see this more often than you'd think. While I was still completing the report, my phone rang. It was my friend Caleb, who worked at a Mercedes dealership across town. "Madison, this is going to sound strange," he said, "but Ethan is here trying to trade in your car." For a second, I thought I had misheard him. "My car? The one titled in your name?" He says it's shared property. "We were never married." That's what I told him. "Is he alone?" Caleb hesitated. "No, he's with Vanessa." I left the police station so quickly the officer called after me to take a copy of the report. When I arrived at the dealership, I saw Ethan near the sales desk arguing with the manager. Vanessa stood beside him, wearing sunglasses indoors. My car keys were on the counter. Ethan turned when he heard my footsteps. "Oh," he said bitterly, "now you decide to show up. To stop you from stealing my car." "It isn't stealing. I've been driving it for years. You've borrowed it. My name is on the title, registration, insurance, and loan." Vanessa stepped forward. "He needs transportation while he gets back on his feet. With my car, you destroyed his stability. I canceled a wedding." "I did not cancel his ability to work." Ethan pointed at me. "You emptied our life overnight. You canceled my cards. You left me with bills." "They were my cards. You were an authorized user. I used one for necessities. $8,000 in furniture. The old furniture doesn't fit the new place." The sales manager made a sound that might have been a cough. Vanessa folded her arms. "Can we stop acting like Madison is the victim here?" I looked at her. "Your husband knows you're here." Her face changed. Only slightly, but enough. Ethan stepped between us. "Leave Lucas out of this." "So you knew she was married?" "I found out after the wedding was canceled. Yet you're here with her now." Before he could answer, Paige's voice came from behind me. Because apparently, one public disaster wasn't enough. I turned. She had followed me from the police station after I texted her the dealership address. Ethan glared at her. "Nobody asked you to come." Paige smiled. "I know. That's why it's called friendship rather than an invitation strategy." The dealership doors opened again. A man in a charcoal suit walked in. Vanessa went completely still. Lucas Hale removed his sunglasses and looked from his wife to Ethan, then to my car keys on the counter. "There you are," he said. Vanessa's lips parted. "Lucas, I can explain." "I hope so. You told me you were helping a coworker move." Ethan looked suddenly fascinated by the floor. Lucas turned toward me. "Are you Madison?" "Yes. The woman who sent the invoice." "That would be me." He nodded once. "Creative." Then he looked at Vanessa. "You asked to be in their wedding?" "It wasn't like that. You told Ethan you were single." Vanessa's face drained. "I never said that." Ethan looked up sharply. "Yes, you did." "No. You assumed. You told me Lucas was basically gone. Because we were having problems. That isn't the same as being single." Lucas let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "You've been wearing a wedding ring for 6 months." Silence spread across the showroom. That was the moment I finally understood. Ethan had not been deceived. Not completely. He had simply chosen the version of the truth that allowed him to keep Vanessa close. Lucas pointed toward the exit. "Vanessa, car." "No." She tried to protest, but one look at his face stopped her. As she walked away, Ethan reached for her arm. She pulled back. "Don't." The rejection struck him harder than anything I had said. Lucas looked at me once more, before following her. "You did me a favor," he said quietly. Then he left. Ethan stood beside the car he had tried to steal, watching his married ex-girlfriend walk away from him. And for the first time since I canceled the wedding, he looked less angry than afraid. For a long time after Lucas drove away with Vanessa, none of us moved. The Mercedes showroom had gone strangely quiet. The sales manager cleared his throat. "Miss Reed, would you like your keys back?" I looked down. They were still sitting on the counter where Ethan had placed them. "My keys," I repeated softly. The manager handed them to me. "They never should have left your possession." I slipped them into my purse. Across the room, Ethan finally found his voice. "You think you won?" I met his eyes. "There was never a competition. You destroyed my life." "No, Ethan." I shook my head. You confused consequences with revenge. His jaw tightened. You're enjoying this. If I were enjoying it, I wouldn't have spent $22,000 to learn who you really are. He laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable. Paige stepped beside me. No. She folded her arms. She finally believes what everyone else has been trying to tell her. Ethan looked at Paige with open resentment. You've wanted us to break up from day one. I wanted Madison to be happy. She was. Paige didn't even blink. She was trying very hard to convince herself she was. The silence that followed hurt more than any argument, because somewhere inside me, I knew Paige wasn't entirely wrong. There had been dozens of moments over the previous year that I'd quietly dismissed. Times, Ethan insisted on approving my clothes before work parties. The way he'd criticize restaurants after I chose them. How every disagreement somehow became proof that I wasn't supporting him enough. Little things, individually insignificant. Together, they painted a picture I hadn't wanted to see. Ethan pointed toward Paige. She poisoned you. No, I answered. You just underestimated me. The sales manager politely interrupted. I think it's time for everyone to leave. No one argued. Outside, Ethan called after me. You'll regret this. I turned around one final time. I already regret ignoring the warning signs. Then Paige and I drove away. The following week felt quieter than the one before. Almost peaceful. I unpacked boxes, hung inexpensive curtains, bought mismatched dishes from a thrift store. For the first time in months, every object inside my apartment had been chosen by me. No compromise, no negotiations, no debates about whether something looked expensive enough. It was freedom, disguised as ordinary furniture. That peace lasted exactly 5 days. Saturday morning, Paige arrived carrying coffee and breakfast sandwiches. She hadn't even taken off her shoes when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Madison Reed. Yes. This is Richard Cole, Ethan's father. In 3 years together, he had called me exactly once to wish me happy birthday. Now his voice sounded 20 years older. Do you have a few minutes? I do. There was a long pause. I owe you an apology. I sat down. For what? For believing my wife. Another silence. She told me you canceled the wedding because you were jealous. I wasn't. I know that now. His voice cracked slightly. I finally heard the whole story. How? Anna. I closed my eyes. Of course. She showed me everything. The screenshots. Yes. The invoice. Yes. The messages from Vanessa. Yes. Richard sighed heavily. I raised my son better than this. I wasn't sure that was true. He continued. Madison, there's something I think you deserve to know. I waited. He never completely got over Vanessa. Those words didn't surprise me nearly as much as I expected. When they broke up, Richard continued, he acted like he'd moved on. Then she married Lucas. I know. No. His voice became quieter. You don't know everything. I leaned back against the couch. For almost a year after Vanessa got married, Ethan kept talking about what would happen if she realized she'd made a mistake. I felt cold. He thought she'd come back. Yes. Richard sounded embarrassed. Patricia kept telling him, first loves always find each other. I rubbed my forehead. And then he met me. Yes. Another long silence. I think. Richard stopped. Then forced himself to continue. I think he loved the life you offered him. The life? You were dependable, successful, organized. You made him feel secure. But when Vanessa reappeared as a friend, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. I understood. He had wanted both. The stable future with me. The emotional fantasy involving her. Richard spoke again. I don't believe he planned to cheat. I didn't ask. No. He sighed. But I do think asking her to replace Paige wasn't really about photographs. I know. He wanted her standing beside him. I closed my eyes. That image suddenly made horrifying sense. Not just attending. Standing beside him throughout the ceremony. Every photograph. Every memory. As close as possible without admitting why. Richard's voice softened. You deserved better. I swallowed hard. I did. And I'm sorry my son couldn't give you that. Before hanging up, he added one final sentence. If Patricia calls you again, don't answer. Unfortunately, Patricia didn't take his advice. She called that evening, then again Sunday morning, then 9 more times before lunch. When I finally answered, she skipped greetings entirely. You have ruined my son's future. No. He lost everything because of you. He lost a wedding. He lost his home. He moved out because he couldn't afford the apartment. He had a job. He's struggling emotionally. Ai, you're the one who caused it. I almost laughed. Instead, I asked one question. Did Ethan tell you he tried to use my credit card? Silence. Did he tell you he tried to take my car? More silence. Finally, he was desperate. That isn't an excuse. You abandoned him. I ended an engagement. You're cruel. No. I spoke calmly. I simply refused to marry someone who valued appearances more than loyalty. She hung up. 3 days later, Paige burst into my apartment, carrying her laptop. You need to see this. What happened? She set it on the kitchen table. A fundraising page filled the screen. Help Ethan rebuild his life after emotional abuse. Goal $25,000. I stared at it. The description claimed I had isolated Ethan from friends, controlled every financial decision, manipulated him emotionally, abandoned him without warning, destroyed his mental health. Nearly $400 had already been donated. Several comments called me abusive. One suggested Ethan should sue me. Paige looked ready to throw the laptop through the window. This is insane. It gets worse. She clicked another image. Someone had uploaded photographs of Ethan sitting alone outside our canceled venue. Professional quality pictures. Dramatic black and white filters. Captions about surviving narcissistic partners. I almost admired the production value. Almost. What do we do? Paige smiled. I already sent everything to my cousin. Your cousin. She specializes in internet fraud. Within 2 hours, the fundraiser disappeared. The platform determined that Ethan's claims could not be verified and violated their policies. That evening, Ethan texted me, "Happy now." I replied with only one sentence. False fundraising is fraud. Don't contact me again. The wedding date arrived the following Saturday. Instead of walking down an aisle, Paige stood in my kitchen, wearing an apron that read, "Dodged a missile. You ready?" For what? Our barbecue. I laughed. You're serious. 100%. Originally, it had been a joke. After canceling the wedding, Paige had suggested we host a cookout for anyone who still wanted free food. Somehow the idea grew. Friends volunteered grills. My cousin's band offered to play. Neighbors loaned folding tables. People who had already booked flights insisted on coming anyway. By noon, Derek no. I smiled to myself. Not Derek anymore. Paige's older brother Mason had been smoking brisket for 14 hours. My college roommate brought homemade desserts. Children ran through the backyard carrying water balloons. Instead of expensive floral arrangements, we decorated with handwritten signs. Congratulations on trusting your instincts. Better a canceled wedding than a miserable marriage. $22,000. Priceless lesson. I hadn't expected so many people. By sunset, 82 guests had arrived. People hugged me, laughed with me. Not at me. Then Anna appeared, carrying a giant bowl of potato salad. She looked nervous. I wasn't sure you'd actually invite me. You're Ethan's sister. I know. She looked embarrassed, but he's still wrong. She placed the bowl on the table. For what it's worth. I wish you'd become my sister. That nearly made me cry. Instead, I hugged her. Later that evening, while music played across the backyard and everyone laughed around the fire pit, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again, I answered. Madison. Yes, this is Lucas. Vanessa's husband. Well, soon-to-be ex-husband. My stomach tightened. I wanted to thank you. For what? For showing me what was really happening. I didn't know what to say. He continued. My attorney suggested something. What? I've transferred $5,000 from Vanessa's personal account into a certified check. I frowned. Why? Because she helped create this mess. You don't owe me anything. No, he interrupted gently. She does. A few seconds later, a photograph appeared in my messages. A cashier's check. $5,000. Attached was a handwritten note. This comes from Vanessa's personal account. Consider it the first repayment for the chaos she helped create. Thank you for opening my eyes. Lucas. I stared at the screen for a long time. Paige leaned over my shoulder. Well, she smiled softly. Looks like honesty finally earned interest. The barbecue continued late into the night. For the first time since canceling the wedding, I danced. I laughed. I forgot to check my phone. I forgot Ethan existed. It felt wonderful. I didn't realize that, while I was celebrating my freedom, he was preparing one final attempt to drag me back into his chaos. I thought the barbecue was the ending. Instead, it was the calm before the last storm. 3 days later, someone knocked on my apartment door, just after 9 in the morning. When I opened it, a woman in a navy blazer handed me a thick envelope. You've been served. She turned and walked away before I could say a word. I looked down at the paperwork. Ethan Cole versus Madison Reed. He was suing me. $50,000. The allegations became more unbelievable with every page. According to Ethan, I had deliberately canceled the wedding to publicly humiliate him. I had emotionally manipulated him for years. I had trapped him in financial dependence before abandoning him without warning. I had orchestrated an online harassment campaign. And finally, I had caused him to lose his job. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so detached from reality that my brain refused to process it any other way. I immediately called the attorney Paige had recommended. 2 hours later, I sat across from Rebecca Lawson, an experienced civil litigator, whose expression barely changed as she read the complaint. When she reached the final page, she closed the file. That's it. I blinked. That's it. Rebecca nodded. I was expecting something more substantial. So this is desperation. She leaned back in her chair. He has no evidence that you did anything unlawful. He says I abandoned him financially. You were engaged. She shrugged. You were not married. You had every legal right to cancel your own accounts and end the relationship. He also claims emotional distress. Rebecca smiled. Breaking up with someone is not a tort. I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. So what happens now? We respond. And the credit card fraud. Her smile widened slightly. We counter Zoo. Rebecca's prediction proved accurate. Within days, Ethan's attorney contacted hers, asking for settlement discussions. Rebecca declined immediately. Then she filed our response. Attached were copies of the fraudulent credit card charges, the dealership security report, screenshots of Ethan asking Vanessa to replace Paige, messages proving he discussed the wedding with his ex before speaking to me. The fundraiser removed for fraudulent claims. His lawsuit suddenly looked much less convincing. A week later, Anna invited me to coffee. She looked exhausted. I'm sorry, she said before we'd even ordered. You've apologized enough. No. She shook her head. You don't know everything. I waited. My brother got fired. I frowned. What happened? He kept missing work because of everything after the wedding. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly. Then HR discovered he'd been using company computers during work hours to manage the fundraiser email lawyers and argue with strangers online. I closed my eyes. So that wasn't because of me. Anna laughed once. Not even remotely. She hesitated. Mom's telling everyone you got him fired. Of course she is. Anna nodded sadly. Dad finally snapped. What do you mean? He told Mom she's spent Ethan's entire life protecting him from consequences. I remembered Richard's phone call. He was right. I know. Anna smiled weakly. It's strange. What is? I lost respect for my brother. She looked at me, but gained respect for you. 2 days later, Richard called. Madison. Hi, Richard. I wanted you to hear this from me before Patricia starts inventing another version. I braced myself. We're moving. Florida. When? Next month. That's a big change. It is. He became quiet. We're not taking Ethan. I wasn't sure I'd heard correctly. What? He's 27 years old. Richard sounded tired, beyond words. He needs to figure out adulthood, without us rescuing him. What brought this on? The lawsuit. He sighed. The attempted credit card fraud. The car. The lies. The fundraiser. And, he paused. I finally realized Patricia kept rewarding behavior that should have been corrected years ago. I listened without interrupting. He still insists you destroyed his life. Richard laughed sadly. I told him something. What? I told him he destroyed his own future the moment he chose, protecting his fantasy over protecting his fiancé. The words settled heavily between us. Finally, Richard continued. You know what hurts me most? What? You genuinely loved him. I did. And he spent more energy trying to impress someone from his past than appreciating the woman standing beside him. I didn't answer, because there was nothing to add. The civil lawsuit moved surprisingly quickly. Rebecca called one Friday afternoon. I've got good news. I'm listening. The judge dismissed his complaint. Already. With prejudice. I blinked. So, he cannot file the same claim again. I leaned against the kitchen counter. What about the fraud case? The district attorney is pursuing it. Seriously. Rebecca nodded. He used her credit card after the relationship ended. That demonstrates clear intent. And the attempted vehicle transfer helps establish a pattern. I thanked her 3 times before hanging up. Life slowly became ordinary again. And ordinary felt extraordinary. I painted one wall of my apartment sage green. I bought secondhand furniture without asking anyone's opinion. Every Wednesday night, Paige came over carrying snacks. Eventually, her brother Mason joined us, then 2 of Paige's coworkers. Wednesday became board game night. Nobody talked about Ethan anymore. There wasn't any reason to. One afternoon, my therapist said something that stayed with me. You keep saying you lost $22,000. I did. She smiled gently. Did you? I frowned. I don't understand. You spent $22,000 discovering who he really was before signing a marriage certificate. She let that sentence sit. I've seen clients spend decades trying to escape marriages built on less obvious warning signs. I stared out her office window. So you're saying? I'm saying you didn't lose $22,000. She folded her notebook closed. You bought your freedom. Several months later, Lucas sent me a meme. It showed a cartoon missile narrowly missing someone diving behind a wall. The caption read, "Congratulations on your excellent survival instincts." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled coffee across my desk. Who would have imagined that my former fiancé's almost divorce would become one of the healthiest friendships in my life? Life really was strange. The last update came from Anna. She called one evening. You want the latest family drama. Always. She laughed. Ethan tried contacting Vanessa again. Oh. She blocked him. What about Patricia? Still convinced they're soulmates. And Richard. He bought a fishing boat. I smiled. Good for him. Oh. She added one final thing. My brother started posting motivational videos. I groaned. Please don't. He talks about rising from the ashes. And they average about 50 views. I covered my face. I'm a terrible person. No. Anna laughed. You're just relieved. She was right. Nearly a year has passed. The wedding anniversary, that never happened, came and went quietly. Instead of celebrating a marriage that would almost certainly have become miserable, I ordered Chinese takeout, invited Paige over, and spent the evening watching terrible action movies. Halfway through dinner, she disappeared into the bathroom. A second later, she called out, "You still have it." I do. The famous invoice. It's staying. Framed above the towel rack hung the original invoice addressed to Vanessa Hale. $22,000. A document that had once represented humiliation. Now it represented freedom. Paige walked back into the living room, shaking her head. I still think it's the greatest breakup artifact in history. It reminds me not to ignore my instincts. She raised her glass. To intuition. I clinked mine against hers. To choosing self-respect over appearances. Looking back, losing the deposits still stings. Starting over wasn't easy. There were nights when the apartment felt unbearably empty, moments when I questioned whether I'd acted too quickly. But then I remember the dinner where Ethan calmly suggested replacing my best friend with the woman he still couldn't let go of. I remember him calling loyalty an aesthetic problem. I remember him trying to take my car, spending my money rewriting reality, and asking the legal system to rescue him from the consequences of his own choices. And every lingering doubt disappears. People sometimes ask whether I regret canceling the wedding. Not for a second. I didn't just avoid an unhappy marriage. I escaped a future where trust would always have come second to someone else's unfinished past. Paige said something the night of the barbecue that I didn't fully understand until much later. You didn't lose your future. You got it back. She was right. Sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do isn't walking down the aisle. Sometimes it's walking away before they ever reach it.